By 1969, KXTV had left its original studios. They had to be torn down to make way for I-5.
And we moved to the studios where we are located to this day.
KXTV renovated the historic country-made dairy building on Broadway and built a state-of-the-art television station which won industry awards. During the News Service 10 days of the 70s, Channel 10 greatly expanded newscasts, becoming the first in the market to offer full weekend newscasts. There was the demand, and there was also the news. In the spring of 1971, an almost unbelievable tale of murder drew news crews to Yuba City, where labor contractor Juan Corona, over a period of several months, had murdered 25 migrant farm workers, burying their bodies in a peach orchard.
I don't worry too much because I know this is not true.
Despite telling Channel 10 News that he was innocent, 2 juries convicted Corona, and he was sentenced to 25 consecutive life terms. The following year, Channel 10 helped alert the residents of Isleton when a levee break sent floodwaters into the small Delta town. And we had the first crews on the scene when an F-86 plane crashed into Farrell's ice cream parlor, killing 22 people. The next year, it would be a disaster of a different type that created widespread evacuations in what was the small town of Roseville.
We will join Bridget Loves Bernie later in Progress.
Good evening. I'm Bill Clark, Channel 10 News, recapping today's events in Roseville on this special Channel 10 News update. Shortly before 8 this morning, an explosion erupted in the Southern Pacific Switchyard in Roseville. Virtually all structures within a 1-mile radius of the initial explosion were destroyed. The small town of Antelope was all but burned to the ground.
No one was killed.
President Gerald R. Ford came stunningly close to being the victim of an assassin today.
On September 5th, 1975, News Service 10 interrupted programming again. This time as an attempt was made on the life of President Gerald Ford.
Here is Roger Lindbergh. Roger?
Well, Dick, President Ford was smiling and shaking hands as he moved across from the Senator Hotel towards the Capitol building. A woman dressed in a long red skirt pointed a .45 caliber pistol at the president. The woman, identified as Manson follower Lynn Alice Squeaky Fromm of Sacramento, was held by Secret Service and police while the president continued on to the Capitol.
President Ford was not injured. Squeaky Fromm may be considered for parole later this year. In 1976, viewers were stunned when the bulletin first crossed, and pictures were broadcast of a terrible school bus accident in Contra Costa County.
From Squaw Valley, California, February 1960, the 8th Winter Olympic Games.
18 years after Channel 10 provided exclusive coverage of the triumph at Squaw Valley, we were there for the tragedy.
They still have not pinpointed the cause of the accident that killed 4 people and left 22 others injured.
A cable sliced through the roof of the tram at Squaw Valley with deadly results.
As journalists, bringing these stories to you is never easy.
We try to balance the bad with the good and the just plain interesting.
Sacramento's newest radio station seems to be a success already.
For 15 years, Rick Kavoris had a knack for finding those, you might say, interesting slices of the community.
Rick Kavoris, News Service 10 at Quad FM.
He also anchored News Service 10 on weekends, for better or worse.
It was like the Flintstone news in those days because half the time the stuff didn't work, and when it did work, it didn't work right.
Before we do sports, we should explain that the air conditioning in our studios went out for a while tonight, and we could have baked bread in here.
Rick now owns a molding and millwork company in Fair Oaks. He looks back on his 15 years at Channel 10.
And of course, though, it's always the people. It's like going into the trenches with people every day and pulling off a miracle. And I think you get really close under those kinds of circumstances.
As the 1980s arrived, they began with a blast, literally. With News Service 10 cameras rolling, extortionists blew up Harvey's Wagon Wheel Resort at Lake Tahoe. No one was hurt.
Rickles on Merv at 7 on 10.
Also in 1980, Channel 10 demolished the old way that news was done.
Eyewitness News.
TV 10 Eyewitness News debuted, marking a new commitment to be on the scene as stories broke and tell those stories through the eyes of those most affected. To achieve increased coverage, the station hired many additional reporters, including 4 who now, a quarter-century later, are still a part of the News 10 team, among the most experienced journalists in Northern California. In 1980, Jennifer Smith joined KXTV as a reporter anchor. through floods,
Among the areas of greatest concern is the San Joaquin Delta.
fires,
The raging fire in the Woodfords area of Alpine County has residents and firefighters on the run.
and visits by the Pope.
Jennifer?
Well, Dick, Pope John Paul II is expected to arrive here in about 25 minutes to celebrate Mass.
In 1981, 1 year after Jennifer's arrival, Eyewitness News brought in 3 experienced reporters. Dan Adams,
Bob and Jennifer, there is no doubt about it. This storm has finally hit Northern California.
Mark Hedlund,
But those who are training out of Castle Air Force Base are primarily just out of navigation school.
George Warren,
Where all that remains of the B-52 bomber is a left wing there and some other debris scattered in the field behind me.
It was also in the early 80s when Bob Burton came to Eyewitness News.
That a girl? Oh my, what a big girl.
To serve the community, Bob Burton developed a program called Waiting Child.
A lot of adoption parents wound up with children who wouldn't have if this station, in its commitment to the community, hadn't moved in that direction when it did.
By 1983, new owners Belo bought KXTV and introduced what you might say was a new spirit.
From the Sierra to the Pacific. Live from California's capital, this is News 10.
22 years ago, we officially became News 10. And again, we expanded our news staff and our newscasts.
And with the addition of Air 10, more live trucks, and a satellite truck, News 10 was able to take viewers to places where many had never been before.
Believe it or not, I am walking down the middle of the 50.
Technology and experience provided award-winning coverage from News 10.
Mother Nature ushers in the new year in a way Northern Californians will never, ever forget.
Alan Frio, who went on to work in Los Angeles, San Diego, and now Nashville, says the pinnacle of his career was at News 10.
But I wouldn't trade those years at Channel 10 for anything at all. In fact, I wish I was back with you guys again.
Get off the bridge! All you people on the bridge, get off the bridge!
For several weeks in early 1997, it rained and it rained and it rained.
The river, and all you see is some walls standing, and that's it.
They have just ordered mandatory evacuations, and we're going to show you why they're so concerned. Take a look at how.
For hour upon hour, News 10 provided continuous live coverage of the worst flooding in this region's history.
There's absolutely nothing that can be done to save this house. If there was any...
Floods are but one danger we face here in Northern California.
Fires and earthquakes have also taken a tremendous toll on lives and property.
Coming up, scenes you will no doubt remember, including the Loma Prieta earthquake, which happened as we were live on the air. As 50 years of News 10 continues.